Hello, hello, everyone. Hola, mi gente. I hope you are having a great day. On our sides, as you know, we welcome you everyone for the first day of the Gira LATAM 2023. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us, especially all the Latin America communities. And of course, as you know, since the last year, we are connecting with other communities worldwide, including in North America, including in Europe, and more. So the target is, of course, to have everyone connected and learn about technology and enjoy this event as much as possible, while of course connecting with all the communities worldwide. As you know, we have three great sessions scheduled for today in English, and also we have one session scheduled in Spanish. I'll give you all the instructions on how you can access all the information, including the event times and dates, and also the different sections that we are going to sessions that we are going to deliver in the events. I'm going to give you all the details in a minute. For now, I just want to, for those that are new to the events, I just want to share with you a bit of context about the Gira LATAM, how it started, and where we are trying to get the event and moving forward. So pretty much this, as you can understand from the name, is pretty much an event that was created initially by the Latin America communities and by the main organizer, which is Ivan. And at some point, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I just had a quick chat with Ivan. I just realized that since this is an online initiative, why not extend this initiative to the other communities worldwide and pretty much enable everyone to connect. Pretty much you can assist your content in English or Spanish. You can also learn a bit of Spanish if you are not fluent too, and if you are not fluent in Spanish, and just enjoy connecting with people worldwide. That's the beauty of these events. Pretty much that's the in short the story of these events, and we are going to run this event this year from the 1st of August up to the 11th of August. I'm going to share with you in the chat the link to the website, but for now I just want to share a bit of details about how you can access the information of the events and all, including the schedule, so then you can attend the sessions that you want and you are interested to. Okay, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So the websites, you can access it on the Gira Online LATAM dash Europa .azurewebsites.net. Don't worry about or wonder about memorizing the URL. I'm going to just share in the chat. You can access it from the chat. From here on the page, you can sign up to the event. You are still on time to sign up. We may have some nice gifts for you. Also, you have here the link, some abstracts about the event, and also the link to our YouTube channel where you can connect, subscribe, and then just receive notifications about the sessions we are delivering during these days up to 11th of August. And then the most important thing is, of course, the schedule. So if you just scroll down a bit, you have the schedule here for the sessions in Spanish and the sessions in English for the different days. We are facing currently some issues with the schedule. We are still working on the schedule for the next days. But in the meantime, for today, you have the schedule available, so you can pick the sessions that you are interested on and pick your language, English or Spanish, to just attend to those sessions. Okay. Given that's pretty much what I have to share with you. And without further ado, I just want to, of course, introduce you to the first speaker that we have today. Welcome, Hans. How are you doing?
Hey, fine, thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. I hope you are doing well, and we are really excited, of course, to attend to watch your session and what you have to share with us in terms of central networking. And without further ado, I just, if you are happy, I'm going to just enable your screen, and the stage is all yours.
Screen is enabled at the moment.
I'm going to just activate.
Okay.
Happy to take over.
Thank you. So thank you for having me. So a short introduction about me. My name is Hannes Lagler-Gruener. I'm a lead cloud architect in one of the biggest consulting company in Austria. So my home location is in Austria at the moment, and I'm presenting from Austria. You can see I'm a Microsoft MVP, the third year currently, and you can find my social profile in Xing, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I have my private YouTube channel, and you can also find some scripts or some solutions in my GitHub repositories. My main focus is Microsoft Azure for sure, but I have also some experience on other hyperscalers, but you can see, depending on my certifications, my main focus is really Microsoft Azure. So today we are talking about a new service in Microsoft Azure, a new managed service. And in this session, I want to cover the following questions: why, what, and how can we do the implementation from, I'll give you the name right now, Microsoft Network Manager. So think about the why. Why should we use Microsoft Network Manager? What are the benefits, or what I've seen in the past on many customer environments? So think about your environment. Think about your starting point in Microsoft Azure. You're going to Microsoft Azure, you register to Microsoft Azure, bring provision an Azure AD tenant, provision some subscriptions, and then you came into the situation to provision a virtual network for your infrastructure service or for your platform as a service services with private link connectivity. Over the time, you have more virtual networks, you connect these virtual networks together, and then sometimes over the time, you also get an hub and spoke environment to connect to on-premise. You also bring a VPN gateway in your environment, bring your network security groups in each network, in each region, bring your virtual machines inside the virtual networks connected together. And over the time, you increase your network environment, increases, and at the end, the complexity increase. So the problem here is you don't have any centralization. You have some configuration in, for example, US, you have some configuration in West Europe. It's not centralized. You don't have a centralized idea about your configuration, about your network security group, about your VNet peerings, where are VNet peered. So it's really, really hard to centralize everything, and the complexity increases. And also when the complexity increases, the operational overhead also increases. And when something gets wrong, there are really high costs to fix the problem, to find the problem, to troubleshoot, and to fix the problem. But at the end, you want to implement for some reasons, for example, an enterprise scale framework landing zone, which means you have more landing zones. And this also means your networking infrastructure increases at scale. So you always get more virtual networks, bring your virtual networks in your environment, make the VNet peering, also assign the network security groups. The answer here for centralization could be Azure Network Manager. Azure Network Manager is a new service, a new managed service from Microsoft. It's released a few months ago, I'm sorry, in the general availability. It's a high scalable, high available service with redundancy and replication across the globe. So you can you deploy your network manager in one region. It is also synchronized into other regions, and you can use this service not only in one region, you can use it in different regions as well. But you can manage two different types. You can manage your virtual networks, and you can also manage your network security admin rules. We will cover this in a few minutes. But let's go to the first part, to manage virtual networks. What can you do? In this case, you have the following benefits. You have a low latency with high bandwidth between resources from different virtual networks using VNet peering. VNet peering is nothing new. You can also implement VNet peering based on the traditional way. So you have two virtual networks and make your VNet peering. Everything is fine. You have here the same benefits from the latency and from the bandwidth perspective. But keep in mind, when you implement VNet peering and you change the IP address space, you always have to synchronize the IP address space because the routing tables must be updated on the other endpoint. In this case, when you use Azure Network Manager, you don't have to synchronize your VNet peering or your configuration when you implement this over Azure Network Manager. And the other benefit what you have is you can plan or you can roll out your changes based on specific regions. So think about you have, for example, two regions, West Europe and North Europe. These are your main regions, and you deploy the configuration to exactly these regions. A few months later, your company discussing another region, you build everything in this region, and when you have your fixed time, you can roll out the VNet peering and the configuration to this new endpoint, to this new region, based on a specific time, infrastructure as code, CI/CD pipeline, whatever you prefer. So these are the main benefits here. How can we implement this? What are the main steps to implement the network manager, including the virtual network configuration? First of all, you have to define a scope for your network manager. The scope can, based on different levels, we will cover this in a few seconds. Then you create a network group or network groups, depending on your requirements. Then you create a configuration, and at the end, you deploy the configuration manually or over infrastructure as code, PowerShell, CLI, whatever you prefer. So let's start with to define the scope for the network manager. What is the scope? The scope is based on subscription level, management group level, or tenant level, what you prefer. What does this mean is when you implement your network manager and you have more subscriptions, you can cover all subscription about new virtual networks, about new configuration. And when you define your scope on only one subscription, you only see these resources from this one subscription. When you go one step higher, you see all subscription based on the management group, what you defined. And the tenant level group is you also have the ability to use your tenant and also cross-tenant connections. So if you have a productive tenant with your subscription, with your management groups, and you also have your test or development tenant with your management groups and subscriptions, you can also scope this based on different tenant levels. So you can implement more tenants with the right permission. It's working really fine. Keep in mind, when you implement, you are starting with the small implementation, for example, based on subscription. You can also change the scope level later on when you want. Then you go ahead and define your first network group. Your network group is a global container which includes a set of virtual network resources based from one subscription, from more subscription. You can segment your environment into different stages, for example, dev, test, prod, or by team, what you prefer. And also keep in mind, you can also have different virtual networks in two networking groups if you want. So, for example, if you have your productive virtual network, you can place this into your networking group productive and also into your networking group dev test, for example. We have here two assignment options. The first one is static and the second one is dynamic. The static networking group is really simple. So the name clarifies, I guess, everything. So you have here the ability to add static virtual networks based on your scope, what you define into your networking group. So it's really static and you add this and then it's added to your group. In this case, static network group also support cross-tenant level. Only static network groups at the moment. It's planned also for dynamic, but at the moment it's only for static network groups. So if you have two tenants and you also want to implement a second virtual network from your other tenant, from other subscriptions, you can use static network groups. When you want to implement dynamic groups are based on different configuration, based on tagging information, based on subscription IDs, based on VNet IDs. So you have here different options to implement. At the end, you implement in your environment an Azure policy. And an Azure policy also requires permissions to implement. So keep in mind, when you have the permission to configure, to administrate your network manager, and you don't have the permission to add policies to your environment on your management group level or whatever, it's not working. So you need exactly this permission, the built-in permission, network or resource policy contributor, or if it's required, you can also break it down into the least privilege permission, policy assignment right, policy for definition right, or network group join action. So these are the minimum permissions which are required to create dynamic-based networking groups. Also keep in mind, an Azure policy is not immediately take effect. So it takes some time. It takes some time, up to 5 minutes. So for example, if you're searching for specified tags on virtual networks, it can take up to 5 minutes to discover and add it to your dynamic group. Then you define your configuration. A configuration is normally a part of a networking group. So up to a 1 network group or up to 2 network groups, depending on your configuration. In this configuration, you have to define your topology. You can choose between 3 different topologies. The first one is the most common one, I guess, a hub and spoke architecture. The second one that you can implement is a mesh architecture. So if you don't have an on-premise connection, you can choose a mesh configuration. And the third one is an hub and spoke with direct connectivity connection. So you have here, in this case, VPN gateway for the hub and spoke configuration, but all virtual networks can connect together without the need of the hub virtual network, and in this case, also a firewall. So these are the topologies, what you have. And at the end, you go to the deploy configuration. You can choose the configuration, and then you say, okay, I want to deploy the configuration in a specified region. And keep in mind, the deployment could take a few seconds. In the past, it's a few minutes. In the preview version, it can take up to 5 minutes. In this case, we are really, really fast for the deployment. You will see it in a few minutes in my live demo. One limitation, so it's really funny. So if you have a customer, if you are a customer with more than 15,000 Azure subscription, this is a limitation from Azure Network Manager. So you can only apply virtual network policies on the subscription level, not on the management group level. In my environment, or my customers don't have more than 15,000 Azure subscriptions. So this is a really, really huge limitation. But if you have 15,000 subscription, keep in mind, this is one limitation, which is really, which happens at the moment. Okay, so let's go to the first live demo. What I will want to show you, I want to give you an overview about the service, about the configuration steps. Then we go ahead and deploy the first configuration and validate the configuration if everything is working fine. So I switch over to my environment. So a moment. Here you can see my Azure environment. I've opened the Azure portal. You can see here 2 virtual networks, 2 resource groups, I'm sorry. In the first resource group, you can see here, I have 2 virtual networks in my environment. I have a virtual network in East US 2, and I have a virtual network in West Europe. I also implement an Azure Bastion host. This is only for the connectivity to my VMs. So I don't have any public IP address assigned with RDP opened on my VM. So I'm using an Azure Bastion host. Here you can see my network manager service. So it's the new service, fully managed Microsoft service. And when we go to the second resource groups, you can see here I have 2 clients, one client in East US 2 and the second client in West Europe. The client in East US 2 also have a public IP address assigned, and we will cover this in a few minutes. I want to show you the communication, the functionality about security groups, but we will cover this in a few minutes. Okay, so let's go to the Network Manager service. You can see here, I'm opening now the Network Manager service, and here you can see the subscription, the resource group, the location where I've installed the Network Manager, the subscription ID, and so on. Here you can also see the enabled features. So in my case, I've enabled the connectivity and also the security admin configuration. You can change it also at later on, but normally you're starting with both configuration. You have here the option to implement to change the scope. In my case, I only implement one subscription. You can also change the scope later on. So if you want, you can also add here a management group or a second subscription, what you prefer. Here you can see is the cross-tenant level subscription or management group in place. In this case, it's not in place. To implement a cross-tenant connection, you need specified permissions in the destination tenant for your user, for your service account. Okay, then we have here the activity log. We have access control EAMs. We have here separate permissions for the network manager. And then we can go ahead and create our first network group. In this case, you can see I have here 2 network groups. One network group is a static-based and the second network group is a dynamic-based. So let's go to the static one. You can see here I have 2 group members. And in this case, you can see here I have implemented my 2 virtual networks from East US and West Europe, and this source is manually added. If you want, you can also bring here a dynamic group in place. So in this case, I have here my dynamic group. And when we go here to the group members, you can see here the source is here based on the POL NVMM dynamic subscription policy. The subscription policy is here defined, and you can see here it's based on a tag value. In this case, when I've added a new tag to my virtual network, in this case, NVM demo, when I'm adding this to my virtual networks, it takes up to 5 minutes, and then it will be covered in my environment and will add here to the group members. So let's test it. I will go back to my network group, also my resource group, and add here the specified tag. I have no tag here in place. I'm adding here the new tag with also the value. Click on apply, and I hope in 5 minutes later we will see the new discovered group in my dynamic group membership. So I have now my network group. Then I go ahead and define my configuration. In my case, I have one configuration in place. So when I create here a new one, I can select here connectivity configuration. And then you have to select, have to define a name, in this case, test. And then you have to define your topology. Here it's really important to understand that there is the mesh configuration, the mesh topology available. You can also configure here a hub and spoke. And you can also define here a hub and spoke with direct connect. So first of all, you have to select your hub. In this case, I'm selecting here, this is my hub. And my spokes, okay. It's a little bit too small. Define here my networking groups for my spokes. Use here my static. And here you have the ability, enable connectivity with network group, the direct connectivity. When I enable this one here, then I have a hub and spoke with direct connect topology in place. If you want to implement a cross-region configuration, also keep in mind you have to enable a mesh connectivity across regions. This is really important when you use hub and spoke connectivity and when you use a mesh topology. In a mesh topology, you also have here the checkbox for cross-connectivity, cross-region connectivity. When it's finished, you can visualize here your configuration. So in this case, I have here my two virtual networks, West Europe and East US2, and these virtual networks are in the networking groups. Okay, so I have here the same configuration. You can see it here. I have here my networking group with my static networking group members, and here in my visualization, you can see the two virtual networks. Okay, when it's finished, when I have my configuration in place, the next step is the deployment. But let's switch to my VM in West Europe. You can see here, I'm opened the VM from West Europe over Azure Bastion host and try to ping over ICMP the VM in East US2. So it's not available, so we have no connectivity between West Europe and East US2. And I want to show you how fast the configuration will be in place. So let's go to the configuration, click on deploy, select the regions where you want to implement the configuration. In this case, I want to implement this in, East US2 and in West Europe. These are my two regions. You can see here a new configuration will be added to the environment. Click on deploy, and it will take a few seconds. The deployment is starting, and then a few seconds later, the configuration is in place. So I hope everything is working fine. Keep in mind, this is a live demo, so it can take a few seconds. And when everything is working fine, in a few seconds, we will see here a request from the destination, response from destination. Here we go. So the configuration is now in place. So the question is now, how can I see, where I can see the configuration? So first of all, you can go here to the deployments. You can see in the deployment section where my configuration is deployed, in this case, East US2 and West Europe, and the deployment status was succeeded. The next option what you have is normally you can see a VNet peering directly on the VNet. So when we go here to the VNet peering, you can see here nothing. So there's no VNet peering. You don't need a synchronize. So this is also really important. But where is the configuration? Where I can find the configuration on the VNet side? This is really simple. You have here a new option, Network Manager. And in this case, you can see here the connectivity configuration, and here is the mesh configuration from my network static group. It's a regional-based cross-region scope. Okay, so this is the first step. So in this case, we have connected two virtual networks over regions together. If you have a new network, assign the new configuration or the new network to the networking group, deploy the configuration, and it will be added to the existing configuration. One question what I always get is what happens when we have a virtual networks with the same IP address space. Normally, when you implement a VNet peering, you get an error, okay, there's the same IP address space. Network Manager, you don't get an error. It will drop the configuration, so nothing will happen, but you don't get an error here. This is really important to know. Okay, so the next step is manage networking rules. So keep in mind, let's think about your configuration. We have virtual networks and we also have networking security groups. With virtual network, with the management option networking rules, you have the ability to implement security rules. What are the difference between admin rules and NSG rules or network security rules? The first thing is where you apply the rules. No? Network security rules you always apply on subnet or network interfaces. Admin rules will always apply to virtual network, and this is a huge benefit. I will cover this in a few seconds. Also, the evaluation order. So the lowest priority from network security groups is always 100. With admin rules, you can define new rules on the priority 0, 1, 2, 3, what you prefer. And the third difference between network security rules and admin rules is the action type. In this case, in security admin rules, you have 3 action types. You have the allow, deny, and always allow action. In network security groups, you only have allow and deny. So what are the difference between the action groups? So I want to visualize this here. Normally, the traffic comes in. So the traffic comes into the network manager configuration, security admin rule configuration. And if you implement an allow, it will flows ahead to the network security rules. So it will also check the network security rules, and depending on this configuration, it will dropped or approved. If you want to implement a security rule with an always allow, it only checks the security admin rules, and if it's allow, then it's okay for you. And the same from the deny perspective. So if you deny anything in the security admin rules, it will be denied on the on your environment without covering the security rules. So what are the benefits about security admin rules? The first one is operation benefits. So in this case, when we think about enterprise scale framework, normally you implement an enterprise model. So you have a center of excellence, and you define company-wide your basic rules. For example, port 3089 RDP is always denied from external, from the internet perspective. This is defined on your basic rules, and you can go ahead and say, hey, the teams, the operating team, based on the specified application, can manage their own network security groups. Administrators don't need to manage all network security groups, so it's decrease the security complexity here, and also minimize the operational overhead. Then the emergency benefit. If you have a port and you want to block this really fast on all your environments, all your virtual networks, you can implement a new security rule, roll out to all your regions, and it will take a few seconds and everything is blocked without the ability to overrule the blocking rule. And the protection benefit when resources are provisioned. So think about new resources. If you have administrators, and the administrators have the ability to add a new address space to a virtual network and provision a new subnet, they have the ability to add a new subnet without a network security group, or add a network security group and allow everything, for example, port 3089. With the networking rules, you can say, hey, I want to drop port 3089 RDP on all my environments. It's added to your virtual network and not to your subnets. So all subnets inside the virtual network will get the admin rules here. So let's go to the live demo. You can see here, I have here my second VM. My second VM in East-US 2 have installed a web server with a public IP address assigned. So in this case...
And, sorry to interrupt, quick question, quick ask. Can you put back the zoom level maybe to be a bit more readable?
Yes, for sure.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, here you can see I have a public IP address assigned with DNS configuration. So normally the website is available over exactly this IP address, but it's not available because it's dropped. So when we go here to the network security group settings, you can see here there's nothing allowed from external, only from internal. This is the basic network security group configuration. So inside my virtual network, I can browse to the web server on the new VM in East-US 2. So when I go to the network manager, I have here a second configuration. And the second configuration is the security admin rule configuration. And you can go inside, and when you have implement, and for example, Azure Firewall, you know there are collection rules available and rules available. In this case, I have here my core rule. It's targeted to the static networking group, and inside my core rule, you can see here I have one rule to allow inbound TCP from the internet to the port 80. So here you can see I have different options and also different priorities. I can choose here priority 1 if I want. I can also choose here priority 0. It's not available, but from priority 1 up to 4069 is available. And here you have your 3 different options. Allow means, okay, it's allow in the security admin rule and also check the network security group. Deny is always blocked, and always allow means, okay, when it's allowed in the network security group, it is allowed. And here you have the same 5-tuple configuration, direction inbound, TCP, and service tag from the internet, and the source port and the service tag virtual network destination port. So in this case, I want to implement this rule here. I want to deploy this rule. So normally you can go here and say deploy. But when we think about Azure, when we think about the cloud style, we also want to implement infrastructure as code. And I want to show you now the ability to deploy the configuration over PowerShell. I'm opening here the Cloud Shell and want to deploy exactly this configuration. So switch here to deployment. And here you can see there's nothing deployed at the moment from the security perspective. So first of all, I want to get all my configuration in PowerShell. You have here the command get AC network manager security admin configuration. You have to add your resource group name and your network manager name. When I browse here, when I execute the command here, you can see here I have one configuration confsec dev. This is my configuration, but you also can see here. When I go ahead and save this configuration into a variable, execute the same and save it into my config file. So you can see here I have my config file, a config variable saved. Next, what I want to do is I want to define my regions where the configuration should be deployed. In this case, I want to deploy the configuration only in East US 2. The reason for this is I want to implement this only for this one VM, not for West Europe, only for East US 2. So I define here my region. And then I define here my array with the configuration. You can see here the variable is at deployment with the network manager name. So this is the network manager name. With the resource group where the network manager name, where the network manager is based. With the configuration ID from my variable, the ID, and the target location, and the commit type. In this case is security admin rule. And I save this to my variable. So I execute here my add deployment. You can see here the location is East US 2 and the configuration ID is the resource ID from my configuration. And at the end, I want to deploy this configuration. In this case, I have here deploy AC network manager commit. Click on execute. And you can see here in a few seconds, I have here a deployment, hopefully. Yes, you can see here one admin rule is now deploying. It will take some seconds. The deployment is succeeded. I switch to my configuration, to my website, and hopefully in a few seconds, you can also see here the web server response. Come on. Okay. Live demo. I love it. So I'm sorry, East2S2. Okay, so nevertheless, where can you find the configuration? So it will take some seconds. So where can you find the configuration? In this case, we go to the East2S2 VM. And same situation, go to the network. And normally you can see here, check for additional rules. You can see here the network security group is assigned. And normally you can also see here additional rules. And the additional rules are normally the network manager rules. So I don't know why it's not available. So let's go back and go to the deployments. Sorry, here. East2S, go to the configuration, collection rules, static, always allow. Source type is internet. So normally everything is fine. Okay. So normally you can see here the configuration should be fine. In this case, I don't know why it's not working at the moment. Yeah. Okay. So it is where it is. So here you can see normally your network manager rules. It's the first time it's not working right now. Yeah. So what happens in the backend? The backend, the network manager implements the rule on the virtual network level. When we go here to the East2S2 configuration, you can see also in the network manager configuration into the security admin configuration, the new security admin configuration, which means allow everything exactly to this virtual network over port 80. So here you can find the configuration itself. Okay. So let's test it once more. Okay, no, it's not working. Okay, so let's go back to the network manager and let's discover the networking group. Normally you also should see here a second network membership. Here we are. The second network membership is here now applied. So it takes up to 5 minutes to discover the second virtual network based on the tagging on the tag. Okay, good. What is also available, so when we think about diagnostic settings or configuration changes, you want to monitor who have implement new services, who have roll out new configuration. You have the ability to implement here diagnostic settings, and you can choose the normal configurations. So for example, a log analytics workspace, a storage account, Event Hub, or a partner solution, what you prefer. If you want to send everything to a log analytics workspace, you can analyze this over Microsoft Sentinel, for example, and bring your network security analyst, security rules and say, hey, there's a new configuration deployed, and alert something here to this. Yeah, okay, now it's available. Take some time, I don't know. Right. So you can see here the configuration is now available, and normally when we go back now to the VM itself, East2S2, to the networking section, you can see here check for additional rules. And here you should see, yes, now it's fine. Network manager security configuration, exactly this rule configuration. And the priority here is always higher than the network security group. So when the traffic comes in, first configuration will be checked. The first configuration is the networking manager security admin rule, which will be checked, and then the network security group. Okay, so Now we want to remove everything. Now we want to remove the configuration. Now we want to remove the connectivity between those two environments. I go here to once more to my environment, to my cloud shell, and say, hey, I want to remove my configuration in East US 2 and West Europe. These are my two environments where I've deployed my networking configuration. You can see it here. Connectivity in East US 2 and connectivity in West Europe. Then I add a new configuration here. In this case, the networking manager, name, the resource group, the configuration ID, and leave it here blank, and add my regions. And here I want to remove my security admin rule, or I want to remove, in this case, my connectivity setting. Connectivity. I want to deploy this configuration, or in this case, remove my configuration. A few seconds here, you can see the connectivity configuration is now removing from both locations, and it will take some seconds. And you can see now the reply, the ICMP reply, is now removed. So we don't have any connectivity between those two regions. Okay, and the same step with the commitment type security admin is to remove a security admin rule from the location. In this case, I want to remove the configuration from East US 2 and define here my security admin commitment type and deploy a remove deployment. And you can see now the deployment here is also removing. Okay, so that's from my short session. So you can see the benefits from Network Manager is to centralize your configuration, also to enforce your security admin rules over all environments, over all virtual networks, over all subnets. It's really, really easy to implement. And you have here the ability to centralize the networking configuration, to centralize the security configuration based on your company standards. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the session, and I will happy for a few questions.
Hi, Jens. We have a few comments, people saying that it's awesome what you are delivering, and also great sessions. So people are happy about what you're delivering. No questions. I actually have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Just we still have a couple of minutes. So see, definitely it's fine to say that the network manager definitely facilitates a lot the management of complex topologies, but comparing these in terms of the pricing perspective, comparing this back to the traditional ways we have to configure a network on Azure, what would you say that's the biggest difference here?
From the pricing perspective, so when we think about Network Manager, you have to pay based on subscription level. So not on the configuration level. So if you have one subscription, you only have to pay for one subscription in your Network Manager. From the peering perspective, from the pricing is the same. So when we implement a virtual network manager and we have a cross-region traffic or a peering traffic, it's the same. So when you have a traditional way. In my point of view, it's a perfect additional service to implement security for the security admin rule perspective, and also decrease the complexity. But
makes totally sense. And even if sometimes you agree that even if sometimes organizations are adopting this service, they, well, at some point they may end up paying a bit more on the service itself, but the service, the simplicity that introduced you end up reducing costs because the amount of complexity that you
Yes.
reduce and the amount of time that your teams are spending managing networks, it's still a cost, if you know what I mean, operational costs in this case. Yeah.
So if you have a static configuration, I think the network manager is not the right service for you. If you're implementing the enterprise scale framework with different landing zones, and you have a new landing zone for your new application, you always have a new virtual networks, then I think network manager is a good additional service to decrease the complexity, to automate the network
setup,
architecture, the setup, and bring your new virtual networks into the environment. So it's really easy to implement. Then it's
but there is one important detail because traditionally you still are able to automate all of the setup of the networking as well, right? Using bicep templates, ARM templates, whatever you want, even PowerShell scripts. But on the daily basis, this service really helps you as well on the operation side of things to just manage things more effectively, right?
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah, so that's really great. To be honest, I didn't have a chance yet to apply this in a real world project, but definitely it's a really it's a really interesting service to use for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, given that we don't have questions, we have our next speaker coming up. I want to thank you again, Ains, for participating. Thank you very much. Your contribution is really appreciated. I know that some people, it's really early in the morning in South America. So at the moment it's probably 1 p.m. So a lot of people are still working, but they will be watching this later on. And I hope that everyone is enjoying the content that we are delivering. Thank you again, Ains. And what we are going to do now is we are going to do a short break, and then we are going to welcome the next speaker and start with the next session. Okay. Once again, thank you, Ains. And let me just enable here quickly the video, the nice fancy video we have, just to do a quick short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes time.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, hello, and we are back. I hope you all are enjoying our sessions. We had the first session with Ains talking about central network managing, so you can learn all about the new service virtual network that enables you to centrally manage all your networks and automate and even simplify the network managing. And now we have another great session coming up. So you can learn all about Azure Data Factory, how you can integrate all your data pipelines. And Alpha is coming to share with us all the tips and tricks that you need to know while using this service. So let me just introduce first the speaker. So welcome, Alpha. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you, Hugo. How are you?
All good, all good. It's a
Mhm.
pleasure to see you again. It has been
Thank
a
you.
while since the call dungeon one, but
Yeah,
thank you very much for being here and contribute to this group and this community. I'm going to, in case you want to share your screen and prepare things in on your side, so then I can hand over and give you. Well, the stage is all yours. In the meantime, while Alpha is preparing everything, don't forget, I'm going to just share again for those that are just joining us right now. I'm going to share my screen, and in the chat, I just shared there the link to our websites where you can pretty much access. Hopefully the site is showing. It's okay, it's loading. All right, so here on the website you can, as you know, the Gira LATAM will be running in the next 2 weeks, up to 11th of August. So that means in case you want to check the schedule and get the times for your favorite sessions so you don't miss them, you can always come here to the website. And of course, when you scroll down, you have here the schedule that you can access the different days and the schedule that you have available for the events. For now, I'm not going to take more of your time. I'm going to just, in case you are happy, Alpha, I'm going to hand over and give you the space so you can deliver your session. Sounds good?
thank you so much, Hugo. Thanks.
If
Yeah,
you want to just, before I enable your screen, if you want to just flip to the slides,
yeah,
because at the moment it's showing, yeah, perfect. All right. The stage
yeah,
is all yours. Enjoy.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hugo. Thanks. Hi, all. Thank you and welcome to my session. In this session, we're going to see tips and tricks about Azure Data Factory, which I have learned from my own journey as well as I learned from my mentee and my colleagues' learning curve as well. So I'm sure it will help you. So let's start with myself. I'm Alpa Buddhabhatti and I'm working as a lead data engineer at Agile Solution. You can find me in LinkedIn and Twitter. You can find my blogs about Azure Data Factory and other services in Mediums. You can find me my code in a GitHub as well, and you can find my YouTube channel where I have tips, tricks, as well as other case study regarding Azure Data Factory as well. And In my company, we are hiring data engineer as well. So if you are interested, please feel free to email me. So now let's start with today's session's agenda. So we're going to see a tips and tricks. So let's start first tips and tricks. So first one is save your changes and refresh Azure Data Factory before clicking on a publish button in your portal. So if you are using the that method, like deploying your changes or publish your changes using the publish button, then sometimes it happens that you and your colleague both are working in the same feature branch. So see, your colleague has done some changes and you also doing same changes in the same time as well. So you have done your changes and you click on save button, you happy with your changes, and then you will click on a button publish buttons. So sometimes what happen, coincidentally it will override your colleague's changes. So it is always a good practice to first do your changes, click on a save button, and then refresh your Azure Data Factory before clicking on a publish button. So it will give you, unnecessary save you from frustration because you overriding changes of your colleagues. So that is a tip number one. We will going to see this in demo as well. Next one is find out a dependency before modifying any Azure Data Factory components. So, for example, in your company, you have more than one pipelines, and they have a data sets or link service or data flow are commonly used. So, it's like generic one because more than one pipeline is using those objects. So, sometimes you have new requirements and you're going to change maybe data set or maybe data flow for that particular business outcome without knowing that it's used by other business outcome, and it may be need to change. So for example, you adding parameter in your data sets, and that data set is used by more than one pipeline, so you don't know it, so you have added parameters, and you run your changes and you happy with that, but it need a parameters in another pipeline as well because you have added new parameter in your data set, and this data set is used by more than one pipelines. So it's always good practice to find out a dependency first before modifying it. So that is a tip number two, and we're going to see demo as well again in after third tips. So this is the third one. So clone Azure Data Factory components, for example, link service, data sets, data flow, or pipelines. So what happened here that sometimes you have some issues and you don't know why it's happening. So better you clone them first. Even in previous case as well, you find a dependency, and if there is any dependency, then directly modifying that object, you clone that object. For example, you clone your data sets, you made some changes there, you add one parameters there, and once you're happy with your changes, then you will change that generic object. So clone is always help you to troubleshoot some issues. So if you have some issues, sometimes in a data flow, you don't know why it's not working. It's work yesterday, you done some changes today, and it's not working now. You cannot see any preview or anything, and it's giving you some random errors. So in that case, you can clone your data flow. You remove a components, only keep one components, source components, and see it allow you to preview or not. If it's allow you to preview, that means your source is okay. Then issue is new step you added today, so that step you need to fix that there is some issue in that new steps, so that you need to add it in a clone data flow, and then you can fix that issue. So this is the one, especially in data flow is always, sometimes you get random error. So it's always helpful if you clone your data flow and then you step by step goes. And if you're not previewing your source after deleting other components, then issue with your source file or tables. If something has changed in your source, that's why it's not working. So you need to find out that, and now you know that your source is not working, so maybe you have added new columns, or maybe you have changed types, or maybe you deleted something or something like that. So you will get idea that issue is in our source file itself or source table itself. So we have finished three tips, so now let's go into portal. So this is my Azure Data Factory, and let's see first one, refresh one. So for example, this is my pipeline, and I'm just modifying it. Let's add here something. So I'm adding here something random, so it's allow me to save here. Okay. So parallelly, my colleague also working into same branch, and they also have done recently some changes. So if without actually I have feature branch, but if I have a after pull, if I click on publish button here, then what happen? It will overwrite my colleague's change. So always practice is to you refresh your Azure Data Factory and then you click on publish button. So you will get changes from your colleagues as well, and then you can publish as well. So that is a tips number one. But actually, if you're working in feature brand, so sometimes this is not possible. That's good, but when you go to your collaboration branch and you directly, because some people using collaboration branch rather than creating even feature branch as well. So sometimes they will go into in the master branch or that, and here publish button is enabled, so they just click on publish button. But before that, you just refresh here your Azure Data Factory refresh, so you will get latest code from other side as well if someone has done some changes, and then you can click in a publish button. So that is a tips one. Tips two is to dependency. Find a dependency. So in Azure Data Factory, in any object. So for example, this is a pipeline. It has a property here, and here you can say that it's related. Who is related? Means who is using your this pipeline. So if I go to dataset, uh, okay, let's go to different branch. So yeah, you can see I have a data set here. So if I go to this data set and again I'm going to this property here, so you can see that someone is using this data set. So at the moment only used by this pipeline. So that's good. If it's not used by many object, only and only one object is used, then there is a no dependency. So you can directly change here. You can maybe add new parameters, and you can do anything you want to do because it's only related to your pipeline, this pipeline. But if here you see two objects or three objects or more than that, then before you changing this data set, you better you just clone it by just this way. Then you do some changes, you add new parameters or whatever you want to do, and then test your pipeline, particular pipeline, using this data set. And once you're happy, then and then you apply this changing into that generic data set. So same way it apply for data flow, data pipeline, link service, and data set. So this is a tips number two. So always and always try to find out dependency first before doing any changes, because your object is already there. It's not new object. So that is the two. And the third one is clone. So we already seen clone as well. So you can clone any object in Azure Data Factory by just clicking on clone here. And if you especially in a data flow, let's see here. So I'm just cloning this uh, because there is some issue. My data flow is not working. It worked yesterday, it's not working today, and today I have added these steps. So I am not sure why it's not working. I cannot preview any of the components, and I have tried and I'm not able to find why it's not working. So what you can do, you can clone your data flow, which is this we just done. You can remove some components like this, and then you try to preview here. So if it still not allow you to preview, that means something is wrong in your source side. Maybe something has recently changed. So what you will do, you will go here and you will check your source, and then you will get idea that, oh, that is a new column you have added, or something is you remove something, or data type has changed in your source, or something like that. So that's why you have to reproject it, or something you need to do. So once you get idea, then you can directly use this clone one, and you add the same steps here which you have in your this pipeline, and then you can rename it. This one is old one and this is your new one. So that way you can do that, and you can do that way very quickly, rather than spending a lot of time on because here sometimes you get errors which it's little bit different as well, so very difficult to find out why it's not working. So that is the third tips. Now let's go back to here. So fourth one is how to dynamically access activity failure error, or if pipeline is successful, then how to get properties. Because sometimes you need to write down, like how many row has written, how many row has read, or how many file has written, or how many file has read. So those kind of the things you need to update in your staging table after finishing your activity or pipeline execution. So you can use some tips here. So for that you can select some properties, and then it will give you that ideas. And in case of failure as well, you would like to get a failure message, and you like to store that failure message into a staging table or maybe in a blob storage, and then you collect all error message and send via send an email via logic apps or something like that. So how you can do that? So for that, let's go to here. So this is the one for that. Let's close this all. Okay, so this is the tips one, which is failure. So in case of the my copy activity fail, then I need a message, error message, and I would like to store that error message in maybe blob storage or table directly. Then you can use a script task if you want to insert that error message into your log table in database, or you can use a web activity to write down into blob storage, or you can use a variable. So in my case, I just simply use a variable to see a actual message. But in real time, you can have a script task or a web activity to write into blob storage or database. So here you can see that this is my pipeline. Let's run this pipeline. So pipeline is reading the data from this input container. So there is a file which is not available here. So that's why it is going to fail. So its pipeline has failed. And now I need that error message into my variable. So here you can see that this is an error message. Okay, and it's saying that blob is not exist because that file is not exist, because that file I have used here in a source which is not available in my blob storage. This file test.csv is not available into this input container in a here. So that's why it's failed. So now my issue is I would like to access its property. So how you can do that? So for that, so you can see here, this is the input arrow and this is output one. So you can see output of properties here. So this is a JSON message. So you can copy this in Notebook plus plus. So this is a hierarchy structure as well. So you can do it by here. So all activity don't have the same properties. That's why you don't know exactly as well. So you have to wait for execute that first activity, copy that message here. So this is the one. So this is the data read. If you want only data read, then you can see output dot data read. But we need error message. So you need output dot errors dot message. So this is actual message. Blob is required. Blob is not available. So that is one. So you need this property dot this property, and it's a case sensitive. So it has to be in capital or small as well. The way it is. So if I go in here, so it's output dot errors dot message. So that's I'm accessing in here. So you can see that it's a activity. So this is my activity, copy one, and then dot errors dot message. So that you need to access here, and then it will work. So then you can see here error message, like what error it has. So in real time you will store this error message into log table, or sometimes you write down into blob storage as well, one by one. So you will get ideas, and then you quickly change that, and then you can run it again, pipeline run it again. So here you have seen that it's the same message as well, because the required blob is not available. So that way you can access in case of the failure. But what if in a case of the success? So let's close this. um, okay, so in case of the success one, so here you would like to know how many data has read or how many data is write. So it's the same method, but here you may have a different properties. So if I'm running this pipeline and it has a file, because I'm using that file which is um, this is my source, and I'm using input container, and I'm using movie db.csv. So if I go to here, and this is movie db.csv. So if I edit here, you will see that I have around 4 rows. Yeah. So and few columns I have. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 and 8. I have around 8 columns, I think 7 or 8. So if I go here and if I run this, I think I already run pipeline. So if let's check here. So this is output, and then you can copy this here and you go to notebook plus plus, and now you need to see how many data is read. So this is the property data read, but if you want to see file read, then you can see it here. This is a right one as well. Yeah, but so this way you can directly access that property. So here you need a data read property. So it is output previous activity dot output dot data read. So if we go to here, and so here you can see that this is a previous activity, which is here copy activity copy data one dot output dot data read. So sometimes it having little bit more in hierarchy, then you need to use a dot and then access that way, hierarchy way. So this way I will get how many data has read and how many data has write. Sometimes you have number of uh, rows as well, number of row or number of column as well, that also possible as well. If you use a data flow and you want to see how many row has read or how many row has write, then yeah, so you can do same way. But only thing is this property is not like, you remember. So you have to run your previous activity, then you check output of that activity, you place in here, and then you will go with hierarchy way. Then you will get idea. So that way you can access your output, either success activity or in a case of the failure one, you can access that particular property for further process. And here you not have to have variable, you can have a script task to write into table, you can have a blob storage, web activity or copy activity for blob storage or something like that. So now go back here for a tips number 5, so which is annotation. So in some times you need to know, like in your production data factory, that which web call it happen, or which SFTP location or which storage account it has used, because it have a different name for each environment. So or sometimes you like to know which container it's used or something like that, so you can use annotation. So once you use annotation, you will see the results in runtime as well, and it help you to like troubleshoot some situation. You would like to know the something is working but it's not working the way you want it. Maybe it's connecting to Dave's data storage account, or uh, another one instead of production storage account. So you can use annotation for that. So let's see demo in here for annotation. So this is the one annotation one. I use a very simple activity in my pipeline, which is web activity, and it's just to do waiting. I have added here parameters. Its value is 10 seconds. So I would like to know that how many seconds is waiting, because in dev I only ask to wait for 5, but in production I would like to wait for 10 seconds. So that's why you don't know exactly, and you'd like to know what it should be and it's matching or not. So for that you can easily go to in property, and you can see this is annotation here. So actually, if I create new pipeline, then you will see that. Let's create new pipeline. So here you can say this is annotation, but it's nothing here. So by default, so you have to add here something. And you can see even here as well, there is a no any dynamic content or any help or something which you can select automatically. So here you cannot do. So you maybe think you just need to type here static message, but it's not that. If you have parameters here, uh, just adding it, okay, then you can use your parameters here directly as well. But for that, actually you cannot access this here, and you don't remember the syntax as well. So for that, what you need to do, you just need to get some other activities or something, like let's say variable, set variable. uh, I have to add here variable as well. So this is my pipeline. I'm adding here one variable because I want to access that and I don't know how to write. So yeah. So for example, this is this test 2 and it has a value 3. So now let's set it here. So here you can see that I'm setting this variable and here you can see that you have expression. So syntax for that one is this. So this is one. So pipelines dot parameters dot taste. So this is a syntax I need. I just copy this syntax. I don't need now this variable and I'm just adding it here. So that's why, because you if you calculate that expression somewhere and you can paste it here and it will work. So this expression can have a parameters, it can have a variables, it can have a global variables, and you can have a concatenation with something else as well. So that way you can add annotation. So once this pipeline will trigger, at that time you can see that, because annotation you can see only and only when your pipeline is triggered. So now let's delete this pipeline. So here I have already added annotation. Okay, that two annotation, that same one, but here you can see that I have added expression because I would like to calculate a variable. I think it's here. This is the one. You can see that this is my parameters, and this is a parameters, and I'm adding 1 seconds. So you can see that I am doing addition as well, and I'm pressing it here. So it's 10 seconds, but when I execute a pipeline, annotation will be 11 because this is a calculation I'm using in a annotation. So when I trigger this pipeline, so it will come in here in a trigger pipeline because we have triggered it. So you can see that it's coming here, and this is still executing, but this is parameters and this is annotation here because I have added two values. So you can see that first one is calculation 10 second plus one is 11 plus I have two annotation. So this is one is another one. So in real time you need, web activity URL, because you have a URL in dev, you have a different URLs, you have a different URLs in the test and production, and you don't know that it may be using production you may be using test or pre-prods URL rather than production one. So when it's run your pipeline and which exit URL or which exit SFTP location or some blob storage blob file or container name or storage name or something like that, and you'd like to know that, then you'd add a annotation, and then you can debug or you can troubleshoot while execution in your production. So this is annotation. So if your annotation is not there, then sometimes you need to add here annotation, and sometimes you can move your annotation from last position to first position as well, like this way. And if it's not here, then you can add by here you can select columns. There are many columns available, and that way, yeah. So I have moved annotation from here to here, so you can see it now here as well. Yeah. So this is annotation, and that also it help you to do troubleshoot in some scenarios as well. So it's always good to have it. So now let's go back here. So sixth one is always use the parameters variable and global parameters. If you're not using them, that means like let's imagine that you need to move 100 files or 100 tables from one place table to file or file to table. Then you have to create 100 pipelines, and if plus you need 100 source and 100 sinks, because your source and sinks are different types like blob types and SQL types. So it's like huge amount of pipelines, very data sets and link service is two anyway, but still. But if you use the parameters, then it reduce one pipelines and two data sets. So you have two data sets, you have a one pipeline, and you can move your 100 files into 100 tables convert, or 100 tables into file in blob storage like SQL to blob storage. You can move that. Or sometimes you have you are calling the Salesforce URL, a REST API, or a CRM 365 API, or any other APIs, and that URL are different per environments. So you cannot type manually. That's why you need something automatically comes when you deploy, even in CI/CD pipeline. So what you will do, you create a global parameters, and in global parameters you will set URLs. So when you deploy into dev, it has a dev URL. When you deploy into SIT, it has a SIT URL. While deploying, it will pick from your global parameters, and it has a different value in each data factory for each environment. Sorry. So that is a global parameters. So in global parameters, you can set either a static value. For example, there are a few things related to performance, SQL database related, which used by many pipelines as well. So you can create a global parameter and you set value there. So if, for example, tomorrow you need to change, then you just change that global parameters and it's applied to all other pipelines as well without changing pipelines or without deploying as well. You may need to publish it, but that's it. So that is a global parameters. And variables, you can create variables in a same pipeline to doing, like, if you want to do some calculation, for example, you need to rename your sync file with a current date and timestamp. So you can calculate in that variable, and then you can use that timestamp because you need it for more than one times. So you can use variables, and there are many things is not possible directly, so you can use variable, you store value there, and then you can do next steps. And parameters is unique, like you can pass parameters from pipelines, and it's unique across your pipeline, so you can reuse in a same pipeline as well, and you can pass to child pipeline as well. Yep. So let's see a demo for that here. So this is the one. So this is the tips number 6. I have very simple demo. So here I have a parameter which is business pipeline, business outcome, BO name, and its default one is input. Then I have variables as well, which is a run date, because I'd like to rename my output file with this date time when my pipeline has triggered. And I have a web activity, and I have a URL as well here. So you can say this is a URL. I'm using blob storage URL. So here you can see that I have used a combination of three, but sometimes you need only parameters, or sometimes you need variables, and sometimes you need three of them. So you can see that this is my global parameter. This is my normal parameter, which is BO name, and this is a variable, because I would like to concatenate my output file with a current date and time .csv. Yeah. So when I run my pipeline, it will do correctly, and when I deploy this pipeline into different environment, here is no hard coded things, because this all comes from either pipeline parameters or global parameters. So you can see that let's run this pipeline, and let's see where is the global parameters. So here in a monitor manage tab, you can see global parameters. You can easily add global parameters here, and you can select types, you give a name, and you give a value, because it's static value hold. Sometimes you need different environments, dev, test, SIT, and UAT as well. So you can create parameters here as well. So you can see that I have created one parameter. It's pointing to my blob storage, which is this blob storage, which I have MovieDB file. So this is blob storage, and then it will use a business outcome, which is input, and then input container means here, and then it save a file underscore current timestamp. So if I go to here, let's see it's finished or not. I think it's a bit low. So this is a pipeline. It's run successfully, and here you can see that it's writing into that particular blob storage in a input, which is a container here, and this is a date timestamp with CSV, and it writing this content. This is a global parameter test, but here you can have output of this activity or any other things, and that's it. You need to set these parameters, and one more thing is you need to go to your storage account, and so this is your storage account. Then you need to give one permission here because your Azure Data Factory accessing that. So you need to give a role for your Azure Data Factory, which I already have given, but you need to give a blob storage. This one, storage blob data contributor access. So you need to select that. You select a manage identity for your Azure Data Factory. Um, for example, this, and then click next, and that's it. So this must you give, otherwise it will give you forbidden errors or some other errors. So this is compulsory needed, that if you like to access your blob storage via web activity in your Azure Data Factory, then you need to give a one permission in here in your storage account for your Azure Data Factory. So if we see now here, because our pipeline has run successfully, so it's writing in a blob storage, and I think we use input container, isn't? Yeah, input one. Okay. So in input container, there will be one new file having new timestamp in today's one. So you can see that this, oh no, sorry, it's this one. And you can see new timestamp as well. And this is the file. And if you see a content, then this is a global parameter test. See, so that is tips number 6, which is the same as how to write down in blob storage using web activity as well. So you need that permissions, and that's it. And that is for tips number 6. And let's go to back here. So this one is expression. So in Azure Data Factory, you have expression, which is just a calculation. If you want to do any calculation in a, like if you use in a, SSIS or SSRS reports, it's a calculation. And you need that because sometimes if you have a requirement to use if activity inside a if activity, like nested if loop, then it's not possible in Azure Data Factory at the moment. Even it's not possible for until inside until activity, or for each loop inside for each loop. So in that case, you can, for if condition, you definitely replace it with a expression. So use expression uh, in a instead of nested if loop, if activity. So we can see demo as well here. So this is nested one. So you can see that I have requirements here. I would like to add here if condition, but you can see you cannot do that. It's disabled. Same for until as well and for each loop as well. Nested is not possible. So what you will do? You will go here, and you will have expression. So this is a solution. So in a case of you have requirement to do nested one, you can use here expression. I think it's here. So this is the one, my nested one. So you can have here n like you can have more, certain limits as well. You can use if inside if inside if, and you can do like if condition, and then you have a true value, and if not, then you can specify the another if condition, and then you have true and false value as well. So this way, this is the expression, and you can use expression when you have requirement to do a nested if in Azure Data Factory. So now let's go back to here. I think where it is, it's here. Yeah. So this is the seven one, and eighth one is split pipeline for monitoring and visibility purpose. So this is also help you to troubleshoot as well. So for example, you have requirement to apply customize email functionality. So you have a send email functionality, and same functionality you need for more than one pipeline. So instead of doing duplication of code, you can create one child pipeline, and you write down your logic in your child pipeline, and then you call that pipeline into your parent pipeline. So that way it's really helpful when you split your pipeline into parent and child. In another scenario is like, sometimes you have a one pipeline having lot of things. So for you it's very difficult to find out why it's not working. So if you have splitted your pipeline, then you can first execute individual object, individual child pipeline. Then you will get idea which logic is not working. Maybe it's one child pipeline is working, second working, and issue is only third. So you fix your third child pipeline only rather than executing everything, and it taking time as well, and it increase your frustration as well unnecessary. So it's always good to split your pipelines, child pipeline and parent pipelines. And most commonly used code you keep into generic pipeline. So let's see, we have a demo but we will see later on. Let's see nine one. So ninth one is to how to write down a variable into blob storage. So for example, Azure Data Factory supports more than 95 sources which you can use as a source or as a sink for your copy activity, but there is no any source available for variable. So if you write down your variable into blob storage, then how can you do that? You can do it in two way. That's your data factory. First you do web activity one, and second one is copy activity one. Web activity one we recently seen, I will remind you again as well. And another one you can use a copy activity. So let's go back into here. So I think we need, this is a split pipelines I'm saying. So you use again split pipeline in another scenario. For example, you need a for each loop inside for each loop, or you need until inside until activity. So in that case, you create a parent pipeline having the one activity, one until activity or one for each loop activity apart from other activity, and you need nested activity which you can write down into your child pipeline. So in that way it is possible. So that is another another reason to use your split pipelines as well. So that is a split pipeline. So here you can see that there is a task as well, execute child pipeline. This is the one you can easily do that. And then you will set some properties like your pipelines name, child pipeline name, and if they have parameters or like that. So we're not going to execute it because it's very simple. Another one is writing a variable. So here you can see that I am having the REST API, and I'm reading this data. Then I'm doing some calculation here. I'm storing that IP in here, and then I need to write down into blob storage, and that result I have in my append variable. So this is my append variable here. Okay, and I would like to result of this into this blob storage variable, and which is web variable. So that is my requirements. How can I do that? So it's very easy. You can have a URL, your blob storage URL, or maybe REST API URL or database, whatever it is. You select, and here you can see that message body is variables. So for that, in this method, you must have one, you know, that access which we gave here, which is store data contributor access. So you go to here and you need to give that to your Azure Data Factory. Then and then this will work. So let's run this one, and meanwhile we can see if we have a copy activity example. So this is a copy activity example. So if you write down this variable into your copy into blob storage, then what you can do, you go to your in your blob storage, you create one dummy file. Okay, and then here what you will do, in your source property in your copy activity, you add new columns, and then here you will use your variables value. So it will overwrite your source file, which is dummy file, but you must have that. Then this will work. So that is copy activity one. Uh, yeah, see, you can see that this example is working as well. It's writing into blob storage, is appending variables and writing into blob storage. So we are writing a append variable into blob storage. Yeah. So let's go back here. So that is a ninth one. Only thing is, if you're using web activity, then you have to have storage blob data contributor access. This is 10th ones, for each loop having the variables inside it. So if you have requirement that you have for each loop and inside you have a variables, and you have used a parallel settings of your for each loop, so sometimes it will give you some issues which you don't know why it's working and it's not working, it's working sometimes, it's not working sometimes. So always advise to not to use a variable inside your for each loop with having the parallel execution, because there is one scenario, for example, you have a for each loop and inside you are calling the Azure function activity for 10 times, for example, and you have variable as well, so variable also execute 10 times. So sometimes it's happen that your Azure function one executing for one item, it's setting the value to your variable 2 rather than setting variable to 1, because of parallel execution. And then it's give you a headache because it works sometimes and it's not work sometimes, so you don't know why it's not working. So try not to use variable inside your for each loop where having the parallel execution. Try to do expression, or maybe you directly use your output of your activity rather than set value, store value into your variable and then use variable. Next one is naming standard. So naming standard, for example, you are using a virtual network, private virtual network, or self-hosted integration runtime. So if you have using private virtual network, then you need to have a private like manage runtime and private endpoints. So when you have those things and you giving name with always good one, like we giving the environment like dev test or sit, and then somewhere we have that as well as name of your private endpoint or manage runtime. So when you it's okay, it's working fine, but when you try to deploy your dev into test or production and you using via arm templates using ci/cd pipeline, at that time it will not work, because it's saying it's not, you cannot modify it, because you already have a manage runtime in your test environment or production environment having the different name or having different location. It must have a same location. So if you're using manage runtime, it should have a same name for all environments but different value, and it has the same location. It cannot have a different location, like in dev have a west us and in sit you have a uk south or something. It should have a same location and it have a same name. So these are the mainly you have to keep in mind, otherwise you will get lot of issues during the deploying via ci/cd pipeline via arm templates which generated by Azure Data Factory. So for example, no any prefix or suffix or anything which related to your environment. So for example, I have managed a private runtime, private virtual network, and I have a managed runtime because I have to use managed runtime if I have a VNet, private VNet then in Azure Data Factory. So this is the one I created. But if I create this one in dev and then in sit I have here sit, and in production I have production, and then I deploy using the arm templates using ci/cd pipeline, it gives lot of issues and actually it give error which you may not be understand as well. So that's why you should give a same name, manage ir, or any name but it's same name, as well as location, it should have a same location, not like west us auto resolve integration runtime like auto location or something like that. If it's auto, then it's same to all location, all environments, or it's if uk south, then it should be have uk south for all different environments. So this is very important things. It give you lot of headaches if you not do that. 12th one is how to process a complex XML or JSON file. So if you have a complex XML or JSON file and if you like to process it, then you can very easily and very very quickly do via Azure mapping data flow, having the flatten transformation. So this is the one which we're going to see in demo. Next one is how to reuse a expression in the same data flow. So for example, you have a data flow and you have a requirements because you have 5 or 6 field which is similar field. You have a phone number, you have a name, first name, last name, and maybe something else. And your output should be like, this is a phone number, this is a name, this is the first name, this is a last name. So that way you need, but your field is only the value of your first name, value of your last name, and value of the phone number. But you have to concat with this is in every time in many fields. So in that case, what you will do, you create a local variable in your data flow, and then you can concat with that. So in this situation, what happened, you don't need to do this is for many times. You only need to set that string only and only for one times in your local variable. So you can easily modify as well, and you need to modify only in one place rather than different 5 place or 100 place as well. So it help you to do reusability purpose. Yeah, similar thing you're doing again and again for many fields in your data flow, you can use local. We will see demo as well. Um, and 14th one is how to reuse your expression in a mapping data flow, but you have more than one mapping data flow. So in this situation, you can use a function, which user defined function you can create, and you can use that. So for example, you have 100 columns, and inside 100 columns you have like 8 or 9 just date related fields. So in that case, in some case you need a full dates, in some case you need a date and timestamp. So instead of creating 8 or 9 or 10 like derived columns and repetitive doing repetitive things, you can create a function, and then function will do what you like to do in one place. You call a function like how you call function in any programming or database language. And the last one is, if you encountering any timing issue, like when you processing a big data, you have big amount of data in database and you have some issues to load them into Salesforce database or somewhere else. So in that case, what you will do? So sometimes, after 24 hours, it's not doing anything. It's keeping there. It take 24 hours in queuing and then it time out. So you have to change some settings in your data, sync data source. Whatever you have sync data source, you need to change that, because by default, sometimes they have a 30 minutes timestamp, and sometimes parallel execution also not there, parallelism is not there much, and there are few other properties as well. So these are the 15 ones. Now let's quickly see a demo, because I have a one demo for all of them, which is so which is this, and you can see that this is a function one. So we will first see function one. So I have used mapping data flow, and you can see that here this is my data flow, and my source is a complex file, which is this is my source XML file. If I paste it here, you will see that here XML. So you can see that I have a date time as well, and I have a hierarchy of my object as well. And I would language is like I have complex one, because my languages object is it's like array inside array. So this file is complex because it has the array inside array. So this is also array and parent also array. So yeah, and you can have a n number of hierarchy as well here. So here you can see that. Yeah, so I would like to flatten my data using flatten transformation, and I have a date field which I would like to have. Sometimes I need only the timestamp with a date, or sometimes I need only date. So for that, you can quickly see here. So for a flattened one, how to process a complex file, so I use a flatten transformation. This is my source. You can add flatten transformation here, and you will see that here result as well, and this is the one. So you can immediately add flatten transformation. Then you can see here unroll by which field you want, and here you can see another field as well, and that's it. So that is where you can process your complex XML or JSON file, and you can preview as well here. I think I need to turn on a data flow for that, and I added here derive columns for date purpose, because you can see that we have XML file and it has a date, but sometimes I need with a timestamp, and sometimes I need without timestamp, because that is my requirement. So I have used this function get data varchar, and see here. So it's converting a string into this particular format. So this is my user defined function, and if you go to here, and here you can create your user defined function very quickly and very easily by clicking this button. You give a suitable name, select a description, add a description, add a function name and parameters. Yeah, that's it. So I already have created function here, and you can see this is my function, which is nothing, it's just an expression. So this is expression. So I'm saying that I have two parameters. First parameter is date, and second parameter is whether I need a full timestamp or half times, like just a date time, just a date, not a timestamp. So if it's false, this is parameter 2 is false. That means I only need a date. And if it's not false, that means it's true. That means I need a full date timestamp. So this is expression. So I don't need to write down this expression into 10 different times in same data flow, different data flow. I can have in here, and then I can use in n number of time in same data flow or in a any different data flow as well. And it's easy to maintain as well. If something need to change, then I only need to change in one place rather than changing into all other places. So that is a library function, user defined function. So you write down into one and you can reuse it. And another one is a local one. So this is a local one I have created. So if you want to see how you create, then so if you want to repetitive thing in same data flow, then you can create local here. This is a local one, and you can add new one. I already have added, and you can edit it from here as well. So I just added this is, but here you can have expression, calculation and many other things, but I have just a static value, and it's named local one. So this is my local variable, and now I can use it in a, I am concatenating it with different fields. So you can do that as well, but actually I think something is typo. Yeah, this should be like this. So yeah, so this way you can concat. I did concat for only two fields, but you can do n number of fields as well. You can refresh and check there as well, but I think we don't have much time. So these are the local ones. So sometimes you need more than one field for, and you do so many times as well. So better to have a create local variable and set value or expression or calculation there, and then you can use in your data flow anywhere else as well. And this one is for this new date I am using false value here, because I need only date, so that's why it will give me date. But for new date and timestamp it give me both, because I set here true, because I'm saying to give me a date and time both. So if I preview here, you will see the result. So while it's doing that, I can show you here there is one more tips left, which is parameters in sync source. So sometimes even you have a more than 20 GB file, and it's you have binary copy or something else, and it giving you, you know, uh, timeout issue or some other issue, like you moving your file from SFTP to blob storage. So in that time also you can add degree of parallelism and one more parameters, and that's it. It will give you, you can move your file very very quickly after adding those two parameters. So do I have copy activity here? Yes. So this is a copy activity, and I think it's using sync as a database. So yeah, so this is one. And for example, if it's a huge amount of data, then I can go to here. You can add here degree of parallelism. You can increase here, and sometimes you need to set concurrency as well. And these are the very important as well. These three parameters. So by default is 30 minutes. So it's timeout. It give you timeout. It's run 24 hours, but it give a timeout after that, because it's only work for 30 seconds, 30 minutes. So these are the properties you need to modify when you have a huge amount of data, or you have a very big file in a copy activity where you have a sync as a file source. So I think with that, let's go to here what left. And so yeah, with that, I would like to thank you for attending my session, and I would like to thank for Hugo and team as well for organizing this event. And now I am open with a question.
Alpha, great session. Thank you very much. Really a lot of information to process. One thing, I see some comments there in the chat, but just people appreciating your session, and there is no question. I actually
Mhm,
have one question about one tip that you were covering there when you
mhm.
said about when you go open the designer for Data Factory, you need to if two people at least start working in the same branch, you need to refresh before publishing. I assume that on Microsoft sides, if you don't refresh and if you try to publish, you it will detect that you are working in a previous version and it will stop you from publishing or not.
Yeah, I think it's maybe improved now, but earlier, I think few months ago, it wasn't there. So
Okay.
actually, I noticed in my own project as well, my
Mhm.
colleague and other colleague is working together, and
They were
they
reverting
always
changes of
override
each
my
other.
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I know, but
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking. You know what I mean? I'm not really sure, but I'm really surprised about that experience because this doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that in terms of, as you know, in terms of a branching strategy, people should always work in separate branch and then merge things, merge the changes to the release branch or the master branch, whatever.
Yeah.
But I was just surprised about the designer to just allow you to publish, even considering that you are working on a previous version that is not, you know, the up-to-date version. You know, they should show some pop-up at least there saying, okay, be careful because you are not working on the latest version and you should be able to, you need to update or something like that. But again, it's a question. It just came to my mind because, you know what I mean, it's definitely, if they are working in that way, it's definitely really danger because people can go there and revert changes of each other. I imagine that you still have their versioning rights on your pipeline, so that means you can always revert, go back and check what were the changes before the last commit and these kind of things.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah, you can do that as well. And I
Yeah.
think now it's in some when you create your ADF and that branch as well, there is a branch policy. Sometimes you will say you cannot publish from feature branch, or you cannot use your master branch directly, because
Mhm.
problem is sometimes many places still they using publishing from master branch. So
Yeah.
all developer have access of master branch, so they will work on same branch and then they click on publish as well.
That's not good, guys. Don't do
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
in an
So
enterprise environment. Don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, actually, yeah. One last thing before we. So all those branches, I assume, definitely the service provides you integration with the repositories and the source versioning control, such as GitHub and Azure DevOps and so on. Correct?
yeah, yeah. You can do only for two, GitHub, and if I disconnect, then you will see that you
Azure
can
DevOps.
do, yeah, DevOps and GitHub. Only
Yeah,
two at the moment. Yeah.
yeah. Sounds great. Makes sense because then it's mixed. I just wonder, do they have, because it has been a while the last time I worked with Data Factory, and I know the guys are all the time releasing changes.
Yeah,
Do they
it's
have?
improve a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have emulator? Are you able to run Data Factory on your local machine? Because previously it was not possible.
No, no, I haven't tried it. Not sure it's now because I haven't heard
Okay.
as well. Yeah,
Okay. So it's not available, no?
yeah, I think so, but not sure
Okay.
if I missed something.
because I know they were talking about the possibility of having the emulator. So that means all these experience that you have in the browser, you can have the same experience on VS Code as an example. So you can load your pipelines and then start to build your pipelines there. And once you are happy, just commit the changes and deploy it to Azure. But I don't know if they released that, to be honest. I have
Yeah, I
not been
think,
following.
yeah, not yet. I think I haven't heard about that. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Once again, thank you very much, Alpha. It was, as usual, a great session, and thank you very much for your time and contribution. And next, we are going to just do a quick short break, and we have our next speaker, Thomas, to let us know all about migration to Azure and using Azure Site Recovery. Let's just do a quick short break, and we will be back soon. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Hugo. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, Alpha. Thank you. And we are back. So we are going to move to the next session and the last for the English track today. Don't forget that you have still sessions in Spanish, and we will have one session, well, two sessions actually in Spanish. All the details you can always refer back to our website. I shared the link in the chat. You can always go back there and check on the website the time of the session, with the speaker and the topic. As far as I know, the topic today is all about Microsoft Fabric, which is another great topic on Azure. So you can check and learn more about Microsoft Fabric. In the meantime, we have Thomas with us. I'm going to just welcome the Thomas. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you. Fine.
Thank you very much for being here and for your availability to contribute to this group. I know that we are a bit late already, so without further ado, I'm going to just ask you if you are happy to just present your screen, and
Yes.
I'll let you take over.
Okay.
I assume it's a bit late on your side as well, right? What time is there?
9 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 8 on my side. Yeah. So
I hope you can see now.
Okay, I'm going to just enable the screen, and I'll be here in the backstage, and if you need anything, and also questions, if there are any questions, we are going to cover them during QA after you present. Okay?
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. Enjoy. Let's see if the screen, sometimes it takes a bit of time to load. Okay, now it's good. Can you see the screen?
Perfect. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, hello and welcome to my contribution for Gira Speaker LATAM 2023. I'm glad you tuned in and you're willing to learn something new about Azure Site Recovery and its migration capabilities. My name is Thomas Bründl and I'm your instructor for this topic today. But first, something about myself. I'm working for a leading Austrian cloud service provider as an expert for hybrid cloud and data center, and my cloud experience covers Azure and as well AWS. And of course, I'm focusing on the hybrid offerings here. So it's no wonder that I'm speaking about Azure Site Recovery, because it's an hybrid offering. You can find also my contact information listed here in case you want to contact me after the session. And don't worry, I will show them in the end again. So let's start. What will be the agenda? I will cover in short what Azure Site Recovery is, prerequisites, a little bit of theory here, the supported scenarios. I have two architectures in my back that I have already implemented. So I will introduce it, and I will give you hopefully a short demo how to set up an Azure Site Recovery environment on Hyper-V. So what is Azure Site Recovery? It's an disaster recovery service offered by Microsoft. It's designed for the use in the cloud and also for hybrid cloud scenarios. And you can achieve a nearly constant replication process from 60 minutes down to 30 seconds. And with that, you are ensuring that the data and workloads are stored synchronously. And another thing you will also get is application consistent snapshots that ensures that workloads and your data are in an operable state after a failover. And that's one of the most important feature of Azure Site Recovery. And of course, it helps and it makes it possible to create a disaster recovery strategy and a disaster recovery site without the need to invest in additional infrastructure. You can leverage the pay-as-you-go model. And so if you want to test it, the first 31 days are free of charge. And afterwards, you have to pay $16 per month per instance if you are replicating outside from Azure. If you are replicating your instance into Azure, you have to pay $25. So what are the prerequisites? What is the theory behind Azure Site Recovery and disaster recovery in general? One of the first steps you have to do before you implement disaster recovery solution is to do an assessment of the application and the workload you want to secure. As a result, you have to know each part of your solution. And as you can see on the right side of the picture, there will be stateless and stateful parts in each solution. This is a classic design you can see here. You have a front end with web services. It can be in the form of containers, an app service, or IIS virtual machines, for example. The point is, if you lose this one of these instances, it doesn't matter, because you can recreate it and the solution will not break down. And afterwards, one layer down, you will find stateful parts. For example, a stateful part is our databases. So you have to manage that you don't lose data in case of an disaster. and so you have to do a failover, and that makes a stateful part of the solution, because it's not an easy task to recreate this resource without to have any data loss. And to fulfill these requirements, there are different techniques and methods available. I speak here from the 3 R's. We have replication, recreate, and recover. And for each application and solution part, you can use one of these techniques. For example, if you have to secure a database and stateful part of the solution, you use replication. And if you have, for example, an stateless part, like the web service tier, the front-end tier I have told you in the slide before, you can recreate these resources. For example, with an infrastructure as code, with infrastructure as code in your GitHub repo or Azure repo, and afterwards you deploy it via Azure DevOps, and you can recreate your resources on this basis. And for both, it's also possible to recover. So you can recover stateless and stateful applications, but if you use recover, you should have in mind that there's always a data gap between the point where the recover has, where the backup has been taken. So there's also always some data loss involved. And moreover, you have also to think about the layer where you can use these techniques. For example, if you start on the data layer, you can use replication. For example, if you start on that with databases. If you are using if you are trying to secure the app layer, you are able to replicate complete containers in case if you have a container solution, something on Kubernetes or Docker or something else. Then you can also have a replication on the file level. So for example, if you install on an operating system an agent, it will manage the replication of the files for you, and this is something you should have in mind if that's maybe the right layer to set up your Azure Site Recovery solution. And the last layer level we have to cover is the resource level. For example, if you have an Hyper-V or an VMware vSphere environment, then you have the possibility to create an VM replication. That means you are replicating the VM on the block level. So that's also a way how you can secure your environment and your virtual machines, for example. Another very important point are these two parameters, RPO and RTO. RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective, and RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. RPO, it can be explained with the question, how much data can you afford to lose? and RTO can be explained with the question, how long can you afford to be down? And how do you find the perfect, or in other words, the ideal solution, the ideal time point for these both points? You have to create a diagram, and on this diagram you have to find the risk and the costs for the availability, and that's nothing that is always the same for each company. And if you know this for your company, you can create these curves, and there where they are crossing, you have the right point. I hope I could explain this in some understandable way. But I think a picture will give you more than 1,000 words. So if there are any questions, you can come to me after this session. And one very important point is there are some deployment planner I would recommend you to use if you are going to start to implement an Azure Site Recovery deployment. It will be available for VMware and Hyper-V. And this will help you to identify, for example, virtual machines that are not compatible with this solution, or maybe you will have a problem with the targeted RPO. You have to fulfill 5 minutes, but with the amount of virtual machines you are going to replicate, you don't meet this requirement. So maybe you have to use a subset of virtual machines to meet the needed RPO time. So what are the supported scenarios with Azure Site Recovery? You can use Azure Site Recovery for and disaster recovery between on-prem and the cloud. And you can use it between on-premise and another on-premise site. You can use it between an cloud provider and Azure, and you can use it for sure for on-premise to Azure. And the platforms that are supported are VMware, Hyper-V, and of course physical servers are also supported. And you can use it to migrate to Azure. One point that it's worth to mention here is that Azure Migrate use the same technology as Azure Site Recovery, and so under the hood, it's the same technology. What are the architectures that I have with me in my bag? This is the VMware architecture that I have already implemented and tested. So on the left side, on the on-prem side, you have a classic VMware environment. You have the ESXi servers and the virtual center for the management. And in this environment, you have to deploy a management server which handles the replication and the management to Azure Site Recovery. And then you have to configure Azure Site Recovery, and the virtual machine will be replicated into a storage account in the cloud. And in case of a failover, virtual machine will be created. The virtual disks will be attached that are stored in this storage account, and the virtual machine goes up, and you have your infrastructure, your virtual machine running in Azure. And in most cases, it's very important to have some kind of privacy. So I also have a firewall and a site-to-site VPN in place here to ensure that the traffic stays private. This is the VMware solution. Let's jump to the Hyper-V solution. The Hyper-V solution is a little bit easier to set up. There is no management server. You only have to install on the Hyper-V server an Azure Site Recovery agent, and this agent will replicate your disks into the storage account in Azure, and then it's the same procedure as it is for the VMware solution. And we have also a site-to-site VPN for the privacy. So let's jump to the demo. I have some things prepared. I have already created a site recovery vault, a storage account with the soft deleted feature is disabled. That's needed because Azure Site Recovery cannot work on a storage account where this feature is enabled. Then I have an Hyper-V server where the Azure agent is installed, and on the Hyper-V there are two Linux VMs with Ubuntu. There is an Apache installed, and yeah, so let's start. I will switch over to the different screen. One moment, please. So this is my Hyper-V environment. As I have told, there are two Linux VMs with Apache installed on it. Operating system is Ubuntu, and I can reach them over HTTP. And as you can see, there is this start page. This is Linux 1 VM, and there is a Linux 2 VM. And let's go to...
Thomas, sorry to interrupt. Quick one. Is it possible for you to probably zoom in, or maybe if you have some tool that you can zoom in on the areas while we are doing the demo? Because it's a bit small, to be honest, and for the people to see clearly what we are showing.
Okay, my TFT is too big. I will
no problem.
I will switch to the small TFT. One moment.
I'm going to add your screen. Yeah, at the moment the slides. Yeah, perfect. That's great, brilliant. Probably if you want to just hide as well that banner there so it doesn't cross anything that you are doing there, that should be fine as well.
Okay.
That banner on the bottom, if you want to just hide them. Yeah, just
We are ready.
yeah,
We can go
sounds
ahead.
good.
So, as I have told, I have 2 virtual machines ready, and I will start to install the required agents and to onboard the Hyper-V environment in my Azure Site Recovery resource. So I'm in Azure and I'm looking for recovery services vaults. This is one thing I have already created, and you can navigate from the overview page to getting started here on the right side. And there you have the possibility to prepare your infrastructure for Hyper-V. So it's asking me if I have done the deployment planning. This is this tool I have introduced you in some slides before. Yes, in this case, I have already done, so nothing more to do here. Are you using System Center VM? And now I don't use this, and here we can create an Hyper-V site. I have already created one. It's just I can create another one, Hyper-V 2. It's just a container where you can locate your Hyper-V servers. So if you have different sites, that's the place to manage it. So there is yet now a second site available. I will switch back to the Hyper-V site, and there is also one Hyper-V server already connected, but I will show you how to connect the Hyper-V server. So there's a link you can select, and then you are able to download an agent, and also you have the possibility to download an registration key. And if I switch back, sorry, if I switch back on the Hyper-V, there's the agent you have to install. It's not difficult, only next, and then it's this icon will be available. So you have to start the Azure Site Recovery registration wizard. You have also the key file available here, and you can select it. Then all the requirements and information will be filled up automatically. Then you can say next. If you are behind the proxy, you can set up, but in our case, that's not needed. And then the registration will be started. This can take some time. So let's switch back to the portal. Afterwards, you will see that your Hyper-V server is connected, and then you are selecting the target environment. And in our case, I use this subscription, and the deployment model should be the new one, Resource Manager Classic. It's not a good choice because I think there are no more products developed in the classic model. And then you can see next. Here you can create the policy. So that are the parameters how your replication has to be done. I will create a new one for Azure demo 2. This is the source type is Hyper-V, target type is Azure. I will take 5 minutes, it's fine. One recovery point is okay. One consistent snapshot in 1 hour, it's also okay. And the replication will start immediately. So I will create this policy. In the meantime, let's see if the registration has been done. Need some time. The policy has been created. And now we can choose it. I will stay on the old one. Then you can say next and prepare. I will skip this, but that would be the whole process to set up your infrastructure. So the next step will be to enable the replication. We have set up the location. There are 2 locations, as I mentioned before. We will go with Hyper-V because this is the one where we have virtual machines available. We can select the target environment. So you have to select a subscription, a resource group, the deployment model, the storage type, which that means if you are creating a virtual machine after you make and fail over, you can choose between a disk that will be created on a storage account, or you can use the modern way that you use a managed disk from Azure, so you don't have to handle the management of it. And you can select the virtual network where your virtual machine has to be deployed. That's fine. And if you have more than one subnet, you can also justify this setting here. There is only one machine available, Linux 1. The first machine is already in replication. I have prepared this in front of the session because the replication will take some time, but I don't want to wait so long. And yeah. For this showcase, I will start with the replication of the Linux 2 virtual machine. So you have to define the replication settings. If you have more than one virtual machine, you are able to select default settings here, but I will set it up for Linux 2 separately. It's a Linux machine. The OS disk is Linux 2. I want to replicate all disks. The managed disk type should be standard SSD. And I have to choose an caching storage account. In this case, I have this account ready. Now you can assign the prepared policy, and afterwards You see what are the parameters of this policy, and you can enable the replication. Okay, let's look for an running replication. If we look here for the replicated items, you see that Linux 1 is already replicated. You see that it's in the protected status. The last snapshot backup was 4 minutes ago. You can also have a look on the available snapshots that are you can choose from. If you don't want to use the latest, you can use another one. And now I will start with the failover test. That means that a virtual machine will be deployed. You can test everything, and afterwards, if you only want to make a test, you can make a cleanup, or you can do the complete failover, and that means that on your Hyper-V side, the virtual machine on the one hand can be deleted, or on the other hand it can be shut down. So you have the choice. So let's start with the test failover. I have to select the right VNet ASR demo. This is the site we have created. We want to have the failover to Microsoft, to Azure, to the cloud, and it's running. And now I will look in the resource group. That's the current state. So there are not so much resources available, but that will change immediately. Let's give it some time. It's running. Let's see if the status has changed. As you can see, the failover is initializing, and it's in progress. To check the result, I have created a test virtual machine because the replicated virtual machine will not have a public IP address. So this virtual machine is in the same subnet in Azure, and we are able to access the replicated machine from there. So let's refresh. There are some new resources. This disk. Now we have a network interface. Are there any questions in the meantime?
No questions so far, Thomas. All good.
Okay.
In the meantime, just while we are doing that, I can actually ask you a question if you don't mind. So you are saying that once you replicate the VM to Azure, it will not have a public IP address. So that means you cannot publicly access it. But I assume, for example, if you have your on your private environment, if you have a virtual machine that are somehow exposed to the web. So we imagine that is running a web app or something. I imagine that's when you do the failover, you have ways to just provision everything you need, including public IP address, in order to ensure that it becomes publicly available. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. You have to think about the Azure Site Recovery dashboard. It's a central dashboard to manage everything. So you can also initiate a pipeline from this dashboard to recreate some resources regarding the technique you have chosen to recover your environment. That's only a small part and a small picture of the things that are possible in Azure Site Recovery.
Yeah, definitely. Because see, based on my experience using site recovery, definitely the service is meant to replicate your environment fully. So that means if you have a virtual machine running some web service or web app on your private data center, when you failed over and you replicate to Azure, it will configure everything in the same way. So then at the end, you have still your web app available, but in this case from the virtual machine replicated on Azure. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
I think we are a little bit further. There is now a temporary virtual machine available here. Normally it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to make this fail over. So this is the virtual machine I have prepared to connect. Maybe it's already here. No. If you wait for something in Azure, it always takes longer as expected. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I always say that's what I mean. We need to be conscious that I know that typically on a private data center we always have a dedicated environment for us, but here it's something global that is being used by thousands of customers. So sometimes you may face some delays, you may face some issues as well, but it's everything expected anyway. There is no perfect platform or environment for sure.
Was there some possibility for you to use Azure Site Recovery, or
You
in
mean
production?
myself?
Yeah. For a customer, or
yeah, but we used in different ways. to be honest, I don't usually I don't work with site recovery on a hybrid environments, hybrid way. Typically, what I work on is migrations from private data centers to Azure, and then we have site recovery for replication to different regions and to failovers in case we need to just fail over the applications they have, including virtual machines.
I also prefer this way than Azure Migrate. I think it's much more. It's easier to handle.
Yeah.
The replication has finished, so let's see if it's worked now. It's reachable, so I can try this, and voila, the virtual machine has been replicated successfully and is available in Azure. To make it public available, I have to attach a public IP to the NIC. I will skip it this now. Yeah, that's all for this demo. I stop sharing now, and as I have said, I will show my contact information last time.
Yeah, definitely share in case we definitely believe that some people will be watching this later on offline, and if they want to reach out to you, you know what I mean, and raise any questions or ask anything, they are able to. If you want to share your screen, you're fine. Yeah, it's coming up. Just going to activate. Yep.
I think that will be enough.
Oh, good. Thank you very much, Thomas. I don't see any questions, to be honest, in the chat. But
okay.
I'm assuming that people are happy about what you delivered. Essentially, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Thomas. We'll be, of course, you can always refer to the website, to our website as well, the Gira LATAM website, and you have all the details of the speakers, including details of Thomas, so you can access their details from of Thomas and contact him as well. And with that, we just close the English sessions for today. I have to say thank you very much once again, Thomas, for your contribution and the availability to be here. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And tomorrow, the day continues with the second day of the Gira LATAM. We will have great sessions coming up. I just invite you to access the chat. I shared the link in the chat, so you can access there all the information about the schedule for the events. You also have sessions in Spanish in case you want to give it a try in Spanish or learn a bit more about Spanish, the language, and so on. And from our sides, from my side, it's have a great day, have a great night, depending on where you are. And thank you very much for attending, and see you tomorrow. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Have a great night. A pleasure. Thank you.